Hello from the Channel studio in London and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches, the programme that takes you around the world in 25 minutes. I'm Teniola Oyetayo. On the programme this week, we focus on how the world marked the International Women's Day this week, from the UN chief warning that global progress on women's rights is vanishing, to highlighting some of the amazing achievements of women around the world. As the world marked International Women's Day this week, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, warned that global progress on women's rights is vanishing. Addressing the UN Commission on the Status of Women, the UN chief told delegates that gender equality is growing increasingly distant and that on the current track, it will take another 300 years to achieve. The CSW is an annual gathering expected to draw more than 4,000 government ministers, diplomats and civil society members for 2 weeks in New York to discuss how to improve the lives of women around the world.
Noting ongoing issues such as high rates of maternal mortality, girls being forced into early marriage and the current state of women and girls in Afghanistan, the United Nations chief warns that progress in the women's rights movement is vanishing.
The session of the Commission on the Status of Women is one of the most important annual events at the United Nations. And it takes on even greater significance at a time when women's rights are being abused, threatened and violated around the world. Progress, won over decades, is vanishing before our eyes. In Afghanistan, women and girls have been erased from public life. In many places, women's sexual and reproductive rights are being rolled back. In some countries, girls go to school, risk kidnapping and assault. In others, police prey on vulnerable women they have sworn to protect. Gender equality is growing more distant. On the current track, where New Women puts it 300 years away. Maternal mortality is increasing. One woman dies every 2 minutes during pregnancy or childbirth. Most of these deaths are preventable. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic continues for millions of girls forced out of school, mothers and caregivers forced out of paid employment, and children forced into early marriage. From Ukraine to the Sahel, crises and conflicts affect women and girls first and worst. And at the international level, some countries now even oppose the inclusion of a gender perspective in multilateral negotiations.
Addressing the opening of the 67th session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women, he called on world governments, civil society organisations and private sector groups to launch initiatives on gender equality.
Many technology leaders, especially women, know that inequality and exclusion are a moral and commercial dead end. Women and girls are leading efforts to make science and technology accessible, inclusive and safe. And in many countries, girls are studying science, technology and math in record numbers. This must be followed everywhere. Women and girls will not be silenced. Their demands for their rights and freedoms echo around the globe, and the Commission on the Status of Women is a dynamo and catalyst for the transformation we need. Together, let us push back against the pushback on women's rights, against misogyny, and forward for women, girls, and our world. And I thank you.
The CSW meets in March every year to address the widespread inequalities, violence, and discrimination women continue to face all around the world.
We must recall that we have neither significantly changed the composition of peace tables nor the impunity enjoyed by those who commit atrocities against women and girls. The status of women is under siege. Aspects of technology, such as social media, have roles in sharing vital information and rallying support, and also in causing further harm through spreading disinformation and fostering violent misogyny. It is critical that governments and private companies work together to foster technology as an enabler and accelerator of progress. The start of the invasion of Ukraine and the largest refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. Women and their children are 90% of the nearly 8 million Ukrainians that have been forced to move to other countries. Similarly, women and girls are 68% of the millions displaced within Ukraine. Peace is the only answer, with women's engagement in the process.
Every day, the International Committee of the Red Cross bears witness to the vital role that women play to protect and lead their families and societies, for instance, in the mobilization and search for the missing relatives. The ICRC is also acutely aware that the humanitarian responses that fail to take gender inequality into account are likely to reinforce gender-based discrimination and other harm. States must ensure that the clear prohibition of sexual violence under international humanitarian law is integrated into national law, military doctrine, and training.
Every stakeholder globally should see women, peace and security as a holistic part of the global peace and security agenda in all its shape and form. We will continue to search for peace in vain in our world unless we bring women to the table. I firmly believe that trying to work for global peace and security minus women is trying to see the whole picture with your one eye cover.
The theme this year is innovation and technological change, and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. Globally, the UN says men outnumber women 2 to 1 in the tech industry, while only 28% of engineering graduates and 22% of artificial intelligence workers are women. There is also a significant gender pay gap of 21%. The CSW67 looks at how a disproportionate lack of access to the internet is holding back women and girls globally. The conference takes place from the 6th to the 17th of March, with representatives of member states, UN entities, and government organisations from all regions of the world joining in the discussions.
The economic, social, health, education crisis had a bad effect on women and girls. The percentage of violence and cyberbullying increased starting COVID-19 pandemic to more than 100%. Women and girls are not able to access justice due to the costly legal fees, especially cases related to personal status law.
If now the door is open for women participation and equality, but this cannot be achieved without a clear vision and strategy, legal structure, official machinery, and provision of the implementation.
Sudanese women were in the front line for the Sudanese revolution, but after the formation of the hybrid government between the military component and civil component, women were deprived for being in the front line of building the nation.
There's also an attack on civil society activists and specifically women human rights defenders. We are witnessing a cyber war on women. There's an increase of conflict-related sexual violence, all of this with zero accountability.
The outcome of the Commission's consideration of the priority theme during will take the form of agreed conclusions to be negotiated by all member states.
Meanwhile, the United Nations has warned that the Taliban restrictions on women's rights and freedoms in Afghanistan could amount to a crime against humanity. Since returning to power in August 2021, the Taliban have ordered women to cover their faces in public and not undertake long road trips without a close male relative. They've also instructed many female government staff members to stay at home and have banned women from taking part in any political or cultural activities.
The Taliban seized power in August 2021, drastically curtailing women's freedoms and rights, including their ability to attend high school and university, a restriction which a new UN report says may amount to a crime against humanity.
The Taliban's intentional and calculated policy is to repudiate the human rights of women and girls and to erase them from public life. It may amount to the international crime of gender persecution, for which the authorities can be held accountable.
Dramatically deteriorating situation of women's and girls' rights in Afghanistan.
The cumulative effect of the restrictions on women and girls has a devastating long-term impact on the whole population, and it is tantamount to gender apartheid.
The report presented to the Human Rights Council in Geneva this week also notes the rise in forced and child marriages, the ban excluding women from other public spaces like parks and gyms, and other restrictions limiting women's ability to work and travel independently in Afghanistan. In December, the Taliban banned most female aid workers, prompting many aid agencies to partially suspend operations in the midst of a humanitarian crisis unfolding during the cold winter months.
While welcome and necessary in the short-term, international humanitarian assistance cannot and should not replace a functioning economy, and this dependency must be addressed. Instead of intensifying its efforts to remedy the situation, the Taliban continues to interfere in aid delivery. I urge them to immediately cease actions that disrupt equitable and speedy access to humanitarian aid to those most in need, particularly women and children. The role of women employees is critical in aid delivery. I urge the de facto authorities to immediately lift the ban on women working for NGOs.
Facing discrimination and marginalisation, many Afghan women have fled the country. 28-year-old Shara, who now lives in Madrid with her family, is one of 19 female prosecutors to have found asylum in Spain recently.
Before Taliban took the power, I was a prosecutor and I had my other social and civil activities in my country, but when the Taliban took the power and collapsed Afghanistan, so I had to flee from my own country due to the security problems. I can go anywhere. I can wear any kind of dress that I want. I can do anything that I want. But there was lots of women remain in Afghanistan, and they are sentenced to be inside their houses, inside the walls. And this is not still. I cannot enjoy from my life because the women in my country, they are not free. They cannot do anything.
Afghanistan, female judges and prosecutors were threatened and became the target of revenge attacks as they undertook work overseeing the trial and conviction of men accused of gender crimes, including rape and murder. Shara says she hopes to return back home someday.
I hope that in this opportunity, in this time, I could study more, I could enhance my capacity, so whenever Afghanistan changed, I will as soon as possible go back to my country and be among my people.
Throughout 2022, alongside international calls on de facto Taliban authorities to respect women's rights, some Afghan women's rights activists staged protests and processions in the capital Kabul, demanding the right to work, education and political participation. In response, Taliban security forces arrested several activists, and the United Nations has warned that the Islamist regime is systematically erasing women from the public sphere.
In celebration of International Women's Day, toy maker Barbie adds British-Nigerian female space scientist to UK role model series. More on that after the break. Please stay with us. You're still watching Foreign Dispatches on Channels Television. In Yemen, which has been torn apart by war and where the humanitarian situation is dramatic, female health workers play a crucial role in serving those needing medical care amid the crumbling health system. Well, let's meet some of the women fighting for Yemen's health sector as the country marks 8 years of conflict.
Alam Al-Saidi wakes up just before dawn every morning, prepares breakfast for her family before heading to work at one of Sanaa's busy maternity hospitals. The general practitioner and epidemiologist is passionate about her work, but faces many challenges dealing with Yemen's crumbling health system, not to mention working as a woman in a conservative society.
Of course, there are challenges as a woman. I have a child at home, so I feel the pressure of caring for my child and coming to the hospital. I worry about my son, who will care for him and be there for him. I find many challenges. On top of that, we don't get salaries, so the challenges compound.
The conflict between a Saudi Arabian-led military coalition that intervened in Yemen against the Houthis in 2015 has devastated the economy and basic services, including healthcare, and left 80% of the population in need of aid. Dwindling foreign exchange reserves and coalition sea and air restrictions on Houthi-held areas hampered imports. Saidi, who graduated in 2013 and also teaches at a university part-time, says she's gravely concerned by the inadequate education and exposure that women receive across the country.
If we compare mothers and newborns in previous years with those today, we will find that there has been a sharp decline in women's awareness on how to care for babies, and as a result, there has been more diseases and epidemics have increased.
Pediatrician Hannah Al-Admi, who works at the same hospital, adds that the financial strain on families in the conflict-ridden country means women aren't able to regularly visit doctors.
With the financial strains on families, this means the mother's health is put at risk. She may have malnutrition or chronic issues that are not checked. So when they come in to give birth, they usually have many complications which are hard to treat. The humanitarian and health situation in Yemen is in a downfall.
These insurmountable challenges only serve as motivators for the women who say they feel it is their duty to continue working in order to reach and support other women.
In a country where an education is often out of reach for thousands of children from low-income families, the Kartini Emergency School in Indonesia is proven to be an exception. The free school is run by twin sisters who hope to keep their students from returning to a life on the streets by teaching them academics as well as practical life skills.
For over 40 years, these Indonesian twins have schooled children from marginalized families living in makeshift shacks along riverbanks and landfills. Affectionately known as Ibu Kemba or twin moms in Bahasa Indonesia, the 73-year-old women established Kartini Emergency School in the middle of a once elite area of Jakarta in 1983.
These people sweep the streets. They don't have money. They have to pay rent in the corners of the city, next to rivers, shacks. How would their children attend school? Meanwhile, the cheapest tuition fees in that area are about $328. That's why we made this school and let those kids enroll here.
The two moms are determined for their students to be able to carve out a living after graduation. Students learn practical skills from cooking to flower arranging, ensuring that they won't return to sorting through trash or begging on the streets.
They can work after we provide them with basic practical skill sets. Schools are, of course, obligated to teach academics and sciences, but here, at Kartini Emergency School, we also teach them skills.
Indonesia has required public primary schools to abolish tuition fees from 2008 in accordance with the law making it mandatory for children to attend schools from grade 1 to 9. Yet, many marginalized children coming from low-income families struggle to afford excess costs such as uniforms and books. Many children also do not possess a birth certificate required by the government to receive free education. Nia Latifa, an alumni of the Kartini Emergency School, graduated in 2007 before enrolling in a public school recommended by the twin moms. Her father used to work as a low-paying office assistant.
Kondisi keuangan keluarga saya itu dibilang
my family's condition was too poor for me to go to a public school. But thank God, after going to the twin moms school and being guided by them, I am able to attend the University of Indonesia, and now I'm a master's student.
Saya adalah bisa S2 waktu itu, bisa kuliah di negeri.
Following the pandemic, Indonesia has seen a 0.26% rise in children out of schools in 2022, according to the Central Bureau of Statistics. With 38,716 primary school out of children in Jakarta alone.
We receive happiness here, peace, contentment. After going through life for 73 years, this is what we've been searching for.
As well as free education, the school also provides meals, a uniform, shoes, pencils and books for the children.
And finally, on the programme, British-Nigerian space scientist Dr. Maggie Adair Pocock has been named as a Barbie role model. She's been honoured with a one-of-a-kind plastic toy in her likeness in recognition of her achievements and for promoting science careers to girls. Take a look.
Celebrating International Women's Day, Barbie released a doll in the likeness of Black female space scientist Dr. Maggie Adair Pocock. The 54-year-old was born in London to Nigerian parents Caroline Phillips and Justice Adebayo Aderi and was raised in Camden. It was announced this week that she had been added to the Barbie UK role model series for her work promoting STEM careers to girls. Speaking on the unique recognition, the British space scientist and educator says the people often react with surprise that a black female would have such a career.
One of the things that I find quite interesting is if I introduce myself as a space scientist, some people do a bit of a double take. They're surprised that sort of a black female is a space scientist because we do often have these stereotypical images of what people do. And I like to smash those stereotypes whenever I get the opportunity.
A former president of the British Science Association, she is best known for presenting a UK TV show called The Sky at Night, as well as her work with the James Webb Telescope. Her Barbie doll counterpart wears a blue starry dress evocative of the night sky and comes with a telescope for stargazing. The creators of the doll even replicated the purple streaks in her hair.
When I was growing up, the Barbies didn't look anything like me. So to have one that is actually me was just so exciting. Both my daughter and I were dancing around the living room just at the thought of it.
Dr. Adair Pocock says her life mission is to encourage girls to find careers in STEM and make it more accessible.
One of my missions in life is to try and encourage girls into STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths. And I want to do this because these subjects are just too important to be left to the guys. One of the messages I like to get out to kids when I go and speak to them is reach for the stars.
Dr. Adair Pocock is also an honorary research associate of University College London's Department of Physics and Astronomy and has been the Chancellor of the University of Leicester since February 2023.
And that's the programme today, but remember our top stories are never far away. You can catch them on channelstv.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyola Oyetayo. Bye for now.